The cosmos cared little for the dead, a fact Kalen Vance knew with the certainty of a priest knowing his scripture. He moved through the skeletal remains of a Vex cruiser, the silence of the void a constant hum against the hull of his exosuit. Outside, the Serpent's nebula coiled in breathtaking veils of crimson and sapphire, a beautiful tomb for the thousands of ships that had met their end in its gravitational tides and forgotten skirmishes. This was a graveyard, and Kalen was a ghoul, a scrapper. His ship, the Magpie, a temperamental beast of patched-over plates and hybrid systems, waited for him, cloaked in a debris field a few clicks away. He and his two-person crew were here for one thing, the Vex ship's command core. Earth Command paid well for the secrets of the Hive. Secrets were the only currency that could buy his homeworld a few more years of precious, ignorant peace. The Vex were a plague of chitin and conquest, a unified consciousness that saw all other life as either an obstacle or a resource. To them, humanity was a fleeting biological anomaly on a conveniently located planet, not yet worth the effort of assimilation. Kalen's job was to make sure that when the day came that the Hive turned its multifaceted eyes toward Earth, they would be met with a nasty surprise. He found the core embedded in the mangled bridge, a crystalline lattice still pulsing with a faint, sickly green light. It was a beautiful, deadly thing. His gauntlet-mounted plasma cutter whined to life, slicing through the hardened conduits that fused the core to the ship's dead heart. Almost got it. Rorik. He sub-vocalized, his voice a low rasp. "How's our ghost signal holding up back on the Magpie?" Rorik's voice crackled in his ear, laced with the usual static of a man permanently wired into his console. "Holding." But a Vex long-range patrol just pinged the edge of the nebula. "They're sniffing around. The ghost is making us look like background radiation, but if they get curious, they'll be on top of us in minutes. Get a move on." Kalen didn't need the encouragement. He worked the final conduit free, the core detaching with a soft thud in the zero gravity. It was heavier than it looked. As he secured it to his back, a flicker of energy from a nearby, shattered console caught his eye. It was a terminal, still drawing residual power from the core. Curiosity was a dangerous trait in his line of work, but ignoring a potential trove of data was a sin. He jacked his suit's interface into the port, his visor flooding with the jagged, geometric script of the Vex. Most of it was corrupted, and his decryption software began to stitch fragments together. He saw standard battle logs, crew manifests, and then in something else, a designation Sector 7 Gamma. His blood ran cold. It was the Vex classification for the Sol system. He pushed the software harder, bypassing safety protocols to accelerate the decryption. The fragments resolved into a chilling mosaic fleet logistics, deployment vectors, and a timetable that was terrifyingly imminent. This wasn't a contingency plan. This was an active invasion strategy. "Rorik, patch Maya in. Now!" Kalen snapped, his voice tight. "What is it?" Maya's calm, steady voice was a welcome anchor in the sudden storm. "I'm looking at an invasion plan for Earth, and it's not years away. Maya, it's weeks. They're mobilizing an eradication fleet." A beat of stunned silence. "That's impossible," Rorik stammered. "Command's projections gave us at least another decade. The Hive is focused on the Cygnian front." "Command's projections are wrong," Kalen said, downloading the last of the data. He found another recurring phrase in the logs, a term that didn't fit with military strategy: tenebrous shard. It was linked to a specific set of coordinates on Earth, a remote, uninhabited region in the Andes. The Vex weren't just coming to conquer, they were coming for something specific. "They're looking for something," he murmured. pulling his jack free just as the console died. The patrol's changed vector. Rorik's voice was sharp with alarm. "They're coming straight for us. They must have detected the data draw. Kay, you have to get out of there now." Kalen didn't wait. He kicked off from the bridge, soaring through the ruined corridors of the Vex cruiser like a phantom. The patrol would be on him in seconds. He burst out of a gash in the hull, the nebula's light a blinding kaleidoscope. 2 Vex scout ships, sleek and predatory like obsidian insects, were already cutting through the debris field toward his position. He engaged his suit's thrusters, a desperate burn toward the Magpie's hidden location. Plasma bolts, glowing green and venomous, stitched the space around him. He felt the heat of a near miss wash over his suit. "Rorik, give me a target lock and fire the grapple." On my mark, Kalen weaved through the metallic wreckage of a long-dead frigate, using it as cover. The Vex ships were faster, more agile, but he knew the graveyard better than they did. He was a rat in his own maze. "Ready," Rorik confirmed, his voice strained. Kalen burst from behind a massive chunk of twisted metal, directly in the path of the lead ship. Now a magnetic cable shot from the Magpie's concealed belly, clamping onto Kalen's suit with a bone-jarring jolt. He was reeled in like a fish, the G-forces crushing him into his suit. The Vex ship fired, but the Magpie, its patchwork engines roaring to life with a defiant scream, was already moving. It wasn't an elegant machine. It was a brute, its design a chaotic mix of human pragmatism and scavenged alien engineering. A Signian inertial dampener fought against a repurposed Vex thruster, a combination that no sane engineer would ever approve, but it made the ship's movements maddeningly unpredictable. The Magpie shuddered as it dodged, its hull groaning in protest. "They're on our tail," Maya reported, her hands flying across her tactical display. "Their plasma cannons are charging for a full power volley." "Don't let them," Kalen growled, strapping himself into the cockpit chair as Rorik relinquished the controls. He slammed his hand down on a large, unmarked red button on his console, deploying the welcome wagon. From the Magpie's cargo bay, a cloud of scrap metal sharpened girders, engine blocks, and hull plates from their last salvage run was ejected directly into the path of the pursuing ships. It was a crude, unsophisticated tactic, but against the Vex's precision-based targeting systems, it was chaos incarnate. The scout ships, forced to either fly through the lethal cloud or break off, chose the latter. It was the opening Kalen needed. He pushed the ship's hybrid drive to its breaking point, diving deep into the densest part of the nebula. The ship screamed, alarms blaring a frantic chorus. They were alive, but they were also marked. They couldn't go back to their rendezvous point. Transmitting the data was out of the question. The Vex would be listening, and a burst transmission of that size would be a beacon leading them straight to Earth's hidden network. "There's only one place we can go," Kalen said, his knuckles white on the controls. "We're heading to the Spire." The Spire was a monument to the galaxy's fractured, chaotic state, an ancient orbital station of unknown origin. It was a colossal spear of crystalline material and metallic alloy thrusting up from the accretion disk of a black hole, a place so gravitationally complex that it was considered neutral territory by default. It was a haven for smugglers, spies, merchants, and information brokers, a place where a human could get lost or get dead with equal ease. It was also home to Kalen's only high-level alien contact, a Signian anomalist who went by the name Lyra. He found her in the Undercroft, a sprawling, multi-level bazaar deep in the Spire's core where the air was thick with the scent of alien spices, ozone, and desperation. Bioluminescent fungi cast a dim, shifting glow over stalls where merchants hawked everything from rare minerals to forged identities. Lyra was exactly where she said she'd be, observing a game of chance played with crackling energy spheres between a four-armed Gelcorian and a floating, gaseous entity. The Signians were silicon-based beings, their bodies tall, slender constructs of polished chrome and crystalline fiber optics, their faces impassive masks that betrayed no emotion. Yet Lyra had a peculiar tell. The light pulsing within her optical sensors shifted from a cool blue to a soft violet when she was processing something that defied her rigid logic. Humanity, she had once told him, kept her perpetually in a state of violet. "You're taking a significant risk coming here," she said without turning as he approached. Her voice was a series of perfectly modulated tones, devoid of inflection but sharp as glass. "The Vex have increased their enforcer presence on the spire. They are searching for someone. They're searching for me," Kaelin said, sliding a data chip across the table toward her. "I have something your technocracy's projections failed to account for." She picked up the chip, her slender, metallic fingers holding it with a delicacy that seemed at odds with their construction. She didn't need a terminal. A port opened in her wrist, and she interfaced with it directly. Her optics glowed a brilliant violet. For several long moments, she was utterly still. The only movement of the frantic, chaotic marketplace reflected on her polished chassis. The Gelcorian at the table let out a triumphant roar. Having won the game, Lyra didn't seem to notice. "This data is illogical," she stated finally, her head tilting by a precise 2 degrees. "The Vex's hive is methodical. Their expansion is based on resource analysis and strategic priority. A full-scale eradication fleet deployed against a low priority, pre-interstellar species contradicts all known behavioral patterns. They're not after the species. They're after an artifact," Kaelin explained. "Something called the Tenebrous Shard." The violet light in her optics flickered intensely. "The technocracy is aware of the shard. It is a precursor relic. Our analysis concluded it was inert, a source of negligible energy. The most logical course of action was to leave it undisturbed. Its energy signature was too low to warrant the resource expenditure of removal." "Well, the Vex disagree with your analysis," Kaelin countered. "They're willing to sterilize an entire planet to get it." Lyra's internal processing must have been running at incredible speed. She cross-referenced his data with the technocracy's vast archives, with the fragments of precursor knowledge her people had hoarded for millennia. "There is a flaw in our logic," she said, a statement that for a Signian was a profound admission of failure. "The shard is not inert. The low energy signature is not a sign of dormancy. It is a containment field. The Vex do not want to use its power. They want to release what is trapped inside. It is not a power source. It is a cage." Before Kaelin could process the horrifying implication, a sudden, coordinated movement at the edges of the bazaar caught his attention. Figures in the black, chitinous armor of Vex enforcers were sealing the exits, their multi-lensed helmets scanning the crowd with cold, systematic efficiency. A hulking Tharnok, a mercenary known to work for the Hive, pointed a massive claw directly at their table. "They found us," Kaelin breathed, his hand instinctively going to the sidearm holstered at his hip. "Your arrival was flagged the moment your ship docked," Lyra stated, her calm demeanor a chilling contrast to the unfolding threat. "Their network is more efficient than I calculated." The Vex enforcers began to advance, their methodical, synchronized movements cutting a swath through the panicked crowd. They raised their plasma rifles, the green glow of their charging capacitors reflecting in Lyra's chrome face. They were trapped. The warning for Earth was locked away in a data chip in Lyra's hand. and a wall of Vex shock troops was closing in, ready to turn them both into ash and silence the truth forever. Lyra's response to imminent death was, Kaylin noted with a detached sense of awe, to calculate. Her violet optics dimmed for a nanosecond, processing every variable in the chaotic tableau before them, the velocity of the advancing enforcers, the structural integrity of the surrounding stalls, the precise chemical composition of the Gelcorian's celebratory drink. Your sidearm has a maximum energy output of 4.7 megajoules, she stated, her voice a calm counterpoint to the rising panic in the crowd, insufficient to penetrate the enforcer's carapace armor. However, the energy spheres used in the game are composed of a destabilized plasma contained within a stasis field. If you rupture the field of the central sphere, the resulting chain reaction will create a concussive blast with a force of approximately 3.2 kilotons, localized to a 5-meter radius. Kaylin didn't need a translation. He grinned, a feral, desperate expression. So, make a bigger mess. He kicked the leg of the heavy metallic table, sending it flipping through the air. The Gelcorian, startled from his victory celebration, bellowed in rage as his winnings and the glowing spheres scattered. At the same instant, Kaylin drew his pistol, not aiming for the Vex, but for the largest sphere as it tumbled end over end. His shot was perfect. The energy bolt struck the containment field, and for a silent, beautiful moment, the sphere seemed to implode, its light collapsing into a single, blinding point. Then, it erupted. The blast wasn't a fiery explosion, but a wave of pure kinetic force. The nearest Vex enforcers were thrown back like toys, their synchronized advance shattered into individual, flailing bodies. Stalls made of flimsy alien alloys crumpled, their contents spewing into the air, creating a maelstrom of glittering dust, strange liquids, and terrified, shrieking fauna. Follow, Lyra commanded, already moving. She didn't run. Her movements were a fluid, impossibly efficient algorithm of motion, weaving through the chaos she had predicted with unnerving grace. Kaylin was right behind her, the smoke and confusion providing the perfect cover. They plunged into a side alley, a cramped space slick with slime from a leaking nutrient vat. The sounds of the bazaar were replaced by the groaning mechanics of the spire itself. Plasma bolts hissed past the alley's entrance, superheating the air and casting lurid green shadows on the walls. Down, Lyra instructed, pointing a slender finger at a grated maintenance hatch in the floor. Kaylin didn't hesitate. He tore the grate from its moorings with a grunt of effort and dropped into the darkness below, landing with a splash in a foot of lukewarm, foul-smelling water. Lyra followed, landing silently beside him. I have accessed the spire's primary schematics. The maintenance conduits below this level are a chaotic, inefficiently mapped network. The Vex will be forced to proceed with caution. This will grant us a temporal advantage of approximately 12.7 minutes. Good enough, Kaylin said, activating his suit's infrared sensors. The tunnel was a claustrophobic tube of pipes and cabling, metallic intestine winding through the station's guts. Rorik, you hearing this? We're heading for Docking Bay 94. We need a loud, distracting welcome party. Rorik's panicked voice crackled in his ear. 94K. That's the heavy cargo bay. It's crawling with station security and Tharnok mercenaries. The Vex will have it locked down tight. That is the logical assumption. Lyra's voice cut in, eerily clear over Kaylin's private comm. Therefore, it is the last place they will expect a direct approach. The most probable Vex strategy will be to establish a perimeter around all docking bays adjacent to Bay 94, believing we will attempt a less conspicuous egress. You heard the walking calculator. Kaylin said to Rorik, "Get Maya on it. I want every fuel pump, cargo crane, and sanitation droid in that bay to go haywire the second we show our faces. Make it look like the biggest industrial accident in Spire history." They moved through the tunnels, Lyra navigating the labyrinthine passages with a certainty that defied the darkness. She pointed out high-voltage conduits to avoid and identified the resonating hum of the station's life support systems, using them to mask their sounds. Behind them, they could hear the methodical clank of the Vex enforcers. Their search patterns slow but relentless. They were being herded. The Vex knew the layout too, and they were cutting off escape routes. "They are adapting faster than my projections allowed," Lyra observed, her tone holding what might have been the Silicon equivalent of concern. "There is a command unit coordinating their movements, a synaptic prime." The name sent a chill down Kaylin's spine. A prime wasn't just a soldier, it was a nexus, a direct conduit to the hive mind's tactical consciousness. It learned, it adapted, and it did not stop. Their 12-minute advantage was shrinking by the second. They reached a vertical shaft, a roaring abyss of air recyclers and whirring machinery. "Up," Lyra stated. "Bay 94 is 30 levels above us." A series of maintenance ladders clung to the wall, slick with condensation. The climb was grueling, a vertical race against the closing net. Kaylin's muscles burned, his breath fogging his visor. Lyra ascended with a steady, machine-like rhythm, her metallic limbs finding purchase with unerring precision. As they neared the top, Kaylin's comm crackled again. It was Maya. "Kaylin, we're in position. Rorik has sliced into the bay's control systems. It's a mess of outdated protocols and patched-over security. He's a kid in a candy store. The welcome wagon is ready to roll on your command." "Stand by," Kaylin grunted, pulling himself onto the final platform. A heavy blast door, emblazoned with the hazard symbols of Bay 94, blocked their way. Lyra placed her hand on the control panel beside it. A series of clicks and whirs echoed from within the mechanism. "I have overridden the local lockdown," she said. "On the other side of this door, we will have approximately 14 seconds before Vex enforcers achieve a direct line of fire. 14 seconds is a lifetime," Kaylin said, checking the charge on his pistol. He looked at the impassive chrome face of the Signian beside him. They were an unlikely pair, a cynical human scrapper and a being of pure logic, united by the imminent extinction of a species she considered a fascinating anomaly. He gave her a sharp nod. Lyra nodded back, a gesture she had clearly learned from him. "Unleash hell, Rorik," Kaylin subvocalized. The blast door slid open with a hiss, revealing a cavernous hangar bay. For a heartbeat, there was a strange stillness. The bay was filled with colossal cargo containers, towering robotic cranes, and the hulking shapes of docked freighters. Vex enforcers were positioned with tactical perfection, their rifles already turning toward the opening door. Then, Rorik's chaos erupted. Every light in the bay began to flash, accompanied by a deafening chorus of klaxons. A massive cargo crane, its magnetic grapple swinging wildly, smashed into a stack of containers, sending them tumbling like giant metal dominoes. Fuel hoses detached from their moorings, spraying jets of iridescent, highly flammable liquid across the deck. A squadron of sanitation droids, their programming utterly corrupted, charged forward in a V formation. High-pressure cleaning jets aimed directly at the Vex. The enforcers, creatures of order and precision, were momentarily overwhelmed by the sheer, nonsensical pandemonium. It was the window they needed. Kaylin and Lyra sprinted from the doorway, using the toppling containers as cover. The Magpie was there, docked at the far end of the bay, its boarding ramp already lowered. Maya stood at the top, a pulse rifle in her hands. laying down precise cover fire that forced the Vex to keep their heads down. A plasma bolt seared the air next to Kalen's head, and he returned fire, his shots doing little more than peppering the Enforcer's armor, but adding to the confusion. They were halfway to the ship when a new figure emerged from the shadows. It was taller than the other Vex, its armor less utilitarian and more ornate. Adorned with pulsating bioluminescent conduits, it moved with a terrifying speed and purpose, ignoring the chaos Rorik had unleashed. The Synaptic Prime. It raised an arm and a blade of solidified green energy extended from its wrist. It pointed directly at Lyra. The Prime knew the data was the true prize. It ignored Kalen and charged, its movements a blur. Kalen shoved Lyra toward the ramp. Go! He turned to face the Prime, his small pistol feeling like a child's toy. This was a fight he couldn't win. But as the Prime closed the distance, a beam of concentrated energy slammed into its chest, throwing it back. Kalen looked up to see Maya lowering the pulse rifle, a wisp of smoke curling from its barrel. The shot hadn't pierced the Prime's armor, but it had bought him the second he needed. He scrambled up the ramp, which was already beginning to retract. The Prime recovered instantly, lunging for the closing door, its energy blade scraping against the rising metal with a scream of tortured alloys. The Magpie's engines roared, its jury-rigged systems pushing the ship away from the dock with a violent shudder. The ship tore out of the bay, scraping its port side against the hangar's frame in its haste. Alarms blared as they cleared the spire's superstructure and blasted into the relative safety of open space. Inside the cockpit, the tension was thick enough to taste. Rorik was white-knuckled at the helm, his face bathed in the glow of the console. "They're coming," he said, his voice trembling slightly. Vex interceptors launching from the spire, and something else. One ship. Bigger. Faster. It's matching our acceleration vector. Kalen looked at the tactical display. A single, ominous crimson icon was closing on their position with relentless speed. The Prime's ship. They had the data. They had escaped. But they were being hunted by a creature that was the physical embodiment of the hive mind's will to kill. "We can't transmit the data," Maya said, her voice grim as she analyzed their situation. "Any broad-spectrum burst will be pinpointed, and we can't outrun it. Not in this rust bucket." Kalen looked at Lyra, who was standing perfectly still, processing the new, catastrophic variables. The data chip with Earth's last hope was still clutched in her hand. "The Vexes believe they have won," Lyra stated, her optics flickering. "They have contained the information by isolating its carriers. This is a logical but flawed assumption. They presume there are only conventional methods of communication available to us." She turned her gaze to Kalen. "There is another way, an older way. Precursor technology. There is a deep space communications array, a whisper node, located within the corona of a blue giant star 2 sectors from here. It operates on principles of quantum entanglement, creating an instantaneous, untraceable connection across any distance. If we can reach it, we can send your message. A plan, but desperate, insane plan. A flight into the heart of a star, pursued by an unrelenting alien predator. Rorik, Kalen ordered, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. Set a course for the Viridian system and find us a way to lose that tail. Rorik's fingers flew across the controls, plotting a new, treacherous course through a dense asteroid field. It was a long shot, but for humanity, long shots were all they had ever had. The chase was on. The Viridian system was a place sane pilots avoided. At its heart, the star Viridian Prime burned with the ferocious, incandescent fury of a blue giant, its corona a roiling sea of plasma and radiation that could strip the hull from a battleship in minutes. Flying into that inferno in a ship held together by scavenged parts and stubborn hope was less a calculated risk and more a form of elaborate suicide, but it was their only option. The crimson icon of the Prime's ship, the Harbinger, was a persistent, venomous splinter in their tactical display, closing the distance with a predatory calm that was far more terrifying than a frenzied attack. "It's not just faster, it's smarter," Rorik muttered, his eyes wide as he wrestled with the Magpie's controls. They were deep in the Charon asteroid field, a chaotic belt of rock and ice that should have given them an advantage. But for every evasive maneuver Rorik attempted, the Harbinger seemed to anticipate it, cutting off their escape vectors with geometric precision. "The Prime is processing our flight patterns," Lyra stated from her station, where she was interfacing directly with the ship's sensor array. Her impassive chrome form was a stark contrast to the frayed nerves of her human companions. "It is learning the idiosyncrasies of your vessel, the slight delay in the port-side thruster, the power fluctuations in the primary drive. It is a problem of predictive analysis, and the Prime's processing power is superior, so we need to stop being predictable," Maya said, her gaze fixed on the rear scanner. She had strapped herself into the gunner's turret, a cramped sphere of reinforced plasteel and targeting screens that was her domain. "Kaelin, remember that salvage run in the Kelpie Nebula, the slingshot maneuver?" Kaelin's lips curved into a tight, grim smile. He remembered. It was a reckless, half-insane trick that had nearly torn their ship apart. It was perfect. "Rorik, find me the biggest rock in this field with a high iron content and a stable rotation," he commanded. Taking over the helm, Rorik's fingers danced across his console, sifting through the sensor data. "Got one. A rogue planetoid. Classified XK-113. High-density core. We'll be on it in 90 seconds. Maya, get ready to give that son of a bitch a haircut," Kaelin ordered. "On my mark. I want you to target the Harbinger's primary sensor array with everything the turret's got." He pushed the Magpie's engines to the breaking point, the ship groaning as it accelerated toward the massive, tumbling asteroid. The Harbinger matched their speed effortlessly, staying glued to their tail. They were a mouse being toyed with by a cat. 30 seconds to intercept," Rorik called out, his voice tight. Kaelin could see the planetoid now, a colossal, pockmarked sphere of dark rock filling his view screen. Its rotation was slow, majestic, and utterly unforgiving. Timing would be everything. "It's anticipating a standard flyby," he murmured, his hands steady on the controls. "It expects us to use the rock for sensor cover and try to change vector on the other side." 10 seconds. Rorik counted down. 5, 4, 3, 2, fire. "Maya." Now Kaelin yelled, and at the same instant, he slammed the controls hard to port, pulling the Magpie into a brutal, screaming turn. From the gunner's turret, a volley of plasma bolts and kinetic slugs erupted, a desperate, concentrated barrage aimed not at destroying the Harbinger, but at blinding it. The same moment the shots hit, Kaelin engaged the Magpie's powerful salvage-grade magnetic grapples, firing them directly at the surface of the spinning planetoid. The grapples struck the iron-rich rock with a tremendous clang that resonated through their hull. Instead of flying past the asteroid, the Magpie was now anchored to it, whipped around its massive circumference by the cables in a terrifying high-G slingshot. The ship screamed in protest, metal groaning under the impossible stress. Inside, the crew was slammed into their seats, the inertial dampeners overwhelmed. Red lights flashed across the console as multiple systems overloaded, but the maneuver worked. The Harbinger, its sensors momentarily flared by Maya's barrage and its predictive algorithm broken by Kaylin's suicidal tactic, shot past the planetoid, unable to match the instantaneous change in trajectory. For a precious few seconds, they were out of its line of sight. "Release the grapples," Kaylin roared, fighting to keep consciousness. The cables disengaged, and the Magpie was flung out from the far side of the asteroid like a stone from a sling, hurtling in a completely new direction. "Damage report," he gasped, his vision swimming. "Minor hull fractures along the starboard side," Maya reported, her voice strained. "The main power conduit is fluctuating. Rorik, reroute the auxiliary flow before the drive cuts out." "On it," Rorik said, his hands a blur. "We have a new problem. The Harbinger is correcting its course. We bought ourselves maybe 5 minutes of lead time." "That's it. It is sufficient," Lyra said. Kaylin turned to see her holding a small, crystalline device she had produced from a hidden compartment in her chassis. It hummed with a soft and internal light. "This is a precursor energy modulator. I have been adapting it to interface with your ship's shield emitters. When we enter the corona of Viridian Prime, standard energy shields would be vaporized. This device will create a resonant frequency shield, using the star's own energy to create a protective bubble. It is, however, untested with human technology. The probability of catastrophic system failure is 47.3%. Kaylin let out a short, humorless laugh. "I like those odds. Get it installed." As they raced toward the blazing blue sun, Lyra worked with a focused intensity, integrating her device into the Magpie's chaotic systems. The ship was a testament to humanity's talent for improvisation, a Frankenstein's monster of technology from a dozen different species, all held together with stubbornness and welding torches. Lyra, a being of pure logic and precision, should have been repulsed by it. Instead, Kaylin saw a flicker of that violet light in her optics, a sign of fascination. She was learning from the chaos. Viridian Prime grew in the view screen until it was no longer a star but a universe of fire. Tendrils of plasma, larger than planets, writhed and danced in a silent, violent ballet. The ship's temperature alarms began to scream. "Shields are failing," Rorik yelled. "I can't hold them against this radiation. Activate the modulator." "Lyra." Now Kaylin commanded. Lyra placed her hand on her device, and a low hum vibrated through the ship. The shield display on Kaylin's console, which had been a chaotic mess of red warnings, suddenly stabilized. A shimmering, iridescent bubble formed around the Magpie, the star's ravenous energy flowing around it in beautiful, deadly patterns. They plunged into the corona. The view outside was an indescribable maelstrom of light and energy. It felt like flying through the heart of creation. The ship shuddered violently, protesting the incredible forces being exerted upon it. "The Harbinger is holding at the edge of the corona," Maya reported, her voice filled with a mix of relief and awe. "Even with its advanced tech, it can't follow us in here. The whisper node is located at the star's southern magnetic pole," Lyra stated, directing Kaylin through the fiery chaos. "We must be precise. The resonance shield will only hold for a limited time." Navigating the corona was like sailing a ship through a hurricane of pure energy. Solar flares erupted around them, forcing Kaylin to make sharp, gut-wrenching turns. The heat was immense, and despite the shield, the ship's internal temperature was climbing to dangerous levels. After what felt like an eternity of tense, focused flying, they saw it. The Whisper Node was an artifact of breathtaking scale and impossible design. It was a ring of crystalline spires, each miles high, orbiting a stable point deep within the star's corona. The spires captured and focused the star's energy, creating the quantum singularity at the ring's center that had allowed for instantaneous communication. Kalen brought the magpie in close, docking with one of the spires. The moment they made contact, the ship's power flickered and died. The node is drawing all available power to initiate the connection, Lyra explained, detaching the data chip from her wrist. The transmission must be manually focused. I will need to interface directly with the node's primary conduit. She moved toward the airlock, the chip in her hand. The Vex data is encrypted with Earth's highest-level security protocols. Once I send it, they will have everything the invasion plans, the timetable, the location of the Tenebrous Shard. What about you? Kalen asked, his voice rough. You'll be exposed to the full force of the corona out there. My chassis can withstand these temperatures for 3.4 minutes before critical structural failure, Lyra replied, as if discussing the weather. The transmission will take 3.2 minutes. The margin is acceptable. She paused at the airlock door, turning to face him. The violet glow in her optics was soft. Your species' capacity for illogical, high-risk maneuvers in the face of insurmountable odds is a fascinating variable. It is a quality the hive mind cannot predict. Do not lose it. Before Kalen could respond, she was gone, cycling the airlock and stepping out into the inferno. Through the reinforced viewport, he could see her slender, metallic form moving with purpose across the spire's surface, a tiny, defiant figure against the backdrop of a raging star. On the ship, the remaining crew could only watch and wait. The seconds ticked by with agonizing slowness. Oh, minutes, Maya whispered, her eyes glued to the chronometer. Kalen watched Lyra reach the central conduit. She raised her arm, interfacing with the ancient technology. The entire whisper node seemed to hum, the light at the center of the ring intensifying. The message was being sent. 3 minutes. The temperature inside the magpie was becoming unbearable. Systems were beginning to melt. She needs to get back, Rorik said, his voice strained. At 3.2 minutes. The light from the node pulsed once, a brilliant, silent shout across the galaxy. The transmission was complete. But Lyra did not move. Her form, silhouetted against the star, was still. Lyra, Kalen said into the comm, his voice tight with a feeling he didn't want to name. No response. Her vitals are flatlining, Maya said, her voice catching. On the tactical display, a new warning began to flash. The crimson icon of the Harbinger. It had not been waiting. It had been calculating. It's moving, Rorik breathed. It's entering the corona. The prime was coming for them. It had been willing to wait, but the energy burst from the whisper node's transmission had given it a precise target. It was no longer hunting. It was moving in for the kill. They were trapped in the heart of a star, their ship powerless, their only ally gone, and the avatar of their enemy was closing in, ready to finish the job. The victory of sending the warning felt hollow, a fleeting success in the face of their own imminent annihilation. The Harbinger descended into the corona not with the brute force defiance of the magpie, but with a chilling elegance. Its black, insectoid hull was wreathed in a shimmering green energy field that parted the stellar plasma like a shark's fin cutting through water. It was a predator in its natural element. The synaptic prime hadn't been waiting. It had been adapting, recalibrating its shield harmonics to match the unique radiation of Viridian Prime. The transmission burst had been the final piece of data it needed. It's ignoring the stellar radiation, Rorik said, his voice a half-strangled whisper of disbelief. Its shields are perfectly modulated. How is that possible? It learned from us, Kalen growled, his hands tightening on the dead flight controls. He felt a cold knot of fury and despair in his gut. They had shown their enemy the way. The Prime analyzed the resonant frequency of Lyra's modulator when we activated it. It replicated the effect. He stared out the viewport at Lyra's motionless form on the spire. They had sent the warning, but at the cost of their only guide and, now, their lives. The Magpie was a dead-in-the-water coffin, its power still being leached by the Whisper Node. We're not dead yet. Maya's voice cut through the despair, hard as diamond. The node is still drawing our power, right, Rorik? Can you reverse the flow instead of feeding it? Can we pull from it? Rorik stared at his console, his mind racing. Pull power from a precursor artifact of unknown design that's currently channeling the energy of a blue giant Maya. The feedback could vaporize us, or collapse the singularity and create a black hole right on top of us, or 1,000 other things we can't even imagine. I'll take my chances, she shot back. It's better than sitting here waiting to be dissected by that thing. Kalen's mind seized on the sliver of hope. It was another insane, unpredictable gamble. It was perfect. Do it, Rorik. Whatever it takes. Rip out the safety protocols. Bypass the converters. Just give me power. Rorik's fingers became a blur. He wasn't a pilot or a warrior. He was a virtuoso of systems, a hacker who saw technology not as a set of rules, but as a language to be manipulated. He plunged into the Magpie's core programming, rewriting code on the fly, forcing a connection that should have been impossible. I'm opening a direct conduit from the docking clamp to the primary capacitor, he announced, sweat beading on his forehead. If this works, we're going to get a power surge that will either jumpstart the ship or turn every circuit into molten slag. Brace for, well, something. Outside, the Harbinger was closing in, its weapon ports glowing with malevolent green energy. It was taking its time, savoring the kill. On the spire, Lyra's form was beginning to lose its integrity, the outer layers of her chrome chassis starting to shimmer and dissolve into the stellar wind. Then, Kalen saw it. A flicker, a single, faint pulse of blue light from her optical sensor. She wasn't dead. Not yet. Rorik. Now he bellowed. Rorik slammed his fist down on his console, completing the connection. For a terrifying second, nothing happened. Then, the Magpie screamed. It was a sound of pure, unrestrained power, a shriek of tortured metal and overloaded circuits. Lights flickered, died, and then blazed to life with an intensity that made the crew shield their eyes. The ship's engines, fed by the raw, untamed power of the Whisper Node, ignited with a deafening roar. The ship surged forward, tearing the docking clamp from its mooring on the spire with a wrenching groan. They weren't just powered, they were supercharged. "We have power," Maya yelled from the gunner's turret, a wild grin on her face. "Oh, we have all the power." The Harbinger, poised to fire the killing blow, was visibly taken aback by the sudden resurrection. Its plasma cannons fired, but Kalen, now wrestling with a ship that handled like a wild animal, threw the Magpie into a sharp dive, the green bolts of energy searing the space where they had just been. "The ship can't handle this much power," Rorik warned, his console a waterfall of red alerts. "The drive core is going critical. We've got maybe 2 minutes before we detonate. That's 1 minute more than we need." Kalen gritted out, his muscles straining as he tried to control the overpowered vessel. He wasn't just flying the Magpie anymore, he was aiming it. He looped the ship around one of the crystalline spires, putting the massive structure between them and the Harbinger. He had a new plan, born of desperation and a sudden, terrible clarity. He had to get Lyra. Maya, give me a proximity lock on Lyra's position, he ordered, his voice dangerously calm. Rorik, get the salvage grapples ready. We're not leaving her. The synaptic prime, recovering from its surprise, was already adapting. It didn't pursue them around the spire. Instead, it rose above the ring of the Whisper Node, positioning itself to cut off their only escape route back out of the corona. It knew they were on a timer. It was content to let them cook themselves. But Kalen wasn't running. He shot the Magpie back toward the spire where Lyra lay, the ship's supercharged engines leaving a trail of shimmering distortion in the plasma. He flew with a precision born of years of navigating treacherous salvage sites, bringing the ship to a hair-raisingly close pass over the spire's surface. Fire the grapple. Rorik, now. The magnetic cable shot out, not with its usual thud, but with a supersonic crack, propelled by the immense power surging through the ship's systems. The clamp, guided by Maya's targeting, snagged the inert Signian, pulling her from the spire's surface. Kalen watched the view screen, his heart in his throat, as Lyra's form was reeled in. But the Prime was not idle. Realizing Kalen's intent, it fired a volley of smaller, faster plasma bolts, not at the Magpie, but at the spire itself, aiming to shatter the structure and send a cloud of crystalline shrapnel directly into their path. Evasive maneuvers, Maya screamed. Kalen couldn't dodge. They were committed to retrieving Lyra. Instead, he did the only thing he could. He angled the ship so the supercharged resonance shield took the brunt of the impact. The shrapnel, razor-sharp shards the size of small fighters, slammed into their shield. The iridescent bubble flared violently, holding for a moment before it flickered and died. The modulator Lyra had built was fried. At the same moment, the grapple winch slammed Lyra's body against the outer hull with a sickening crunch. A new alarm, a hull breach warning, blared through the cockpit. Lyra's aboard, but we're exposed, Rorik yelled. Shields are gone, and the drive core is at 90% overload. One problem at a time. Kalen snarled. He pushed the throttle to its absolute limit, aiming the ship straight for the Harbinger. The Prime, confident in its superiority, met the charge head-on, its main cannons building toward a final, decisive blast. You wanted unpredictable, Kalen muttered, his eyes locked on the approaching Vex ship. Here it is. He was playing the ultimate game of chicken. The two ships hurtled toward each other in the heart of a star. Maya, he said, his voice dropping to an unnerving whisper. Remember the welcome wagon at the spire? I need a bigger one. On my mark. I want you to eject the drive core. Maya and Rorik stared at him in stunned silence. Ejecting the drive core was the absolute last resort, a self-destruct mechanism designed to prevent a ship's technology from being captured, a core on the verge of a critical meltdown, supercharged with the energy of a precursor artifact. It wasn't a bomb, it was a miniature supernova. Are you out of your mind? Rorik breathed. Probably, Kalen admitted, but it's a better idea than anything I've heard in the last 30 seconds. Get ready. The Harbinger grew in the viewport, its intricate alien design becoming terrifyingly clear. The green glow of its charging cannons was a promise of swift, clean oblivion. Closer, closer. The ship's proximity alerts were a solid, unending scream. Now, Maya Kalen roared. He yanked the controls, throwing the Magpie into a final, desperate barrel roll. As the ship's belly faced the Harbinger, A section of the hull blew outward, and the glowing pit's violently unstable drive core was ejected directly into the path of the Vex ship. The Prime had no time to react. The core, a seething ball of raw, uncontrolled energy, slammed into the Harbinger's green shield. For a single, silent moment, the shield held, the core's energy washing over it. Then, the shield shattered like glass. The core detonated. There was no sound in the vacuum of space. But the crew of the Magpie felt it as a wave of pure force that shook the ship to its foundations. A son was born and died in an instant. The Harbinger, the Synaptic Prime, and a significant portion of the Whisper Node were consumed by a wave of incandescent white light. The Magpie, crippled and powerless, was thrown tumbling out of the star's corona by the force of the blast. The emergency lights flickered on inside the cockpit, casting long, dancing shadows. The main view screen was dark, the silence deafening after the cacophony of the battle. They were alive, adrift, but alive. Kalen unstrapped himself, his body aching from the violent maneuvers. He stumbled toward the rear of the ship where the breach had occurred. Maya and Rorik were already there, working to seal the gash in the hull with emergency sealant. And beside them, lying on the deck, was Lyra. Her chrome chassis was battered and scorched, one of her arms bent at an impossible angle. But as Kalen knelt beside her, the single blue light in her optical sensor pulsed again, stronger this time. He placed his hand on her cold, metallic shoulder. "Welcome back," he said, his voice hoarse. They had survived. They had sent the warning. But they were stranded in a dead ship, deep in hostile territory, with the full, incandescent rage of the Vex hive about to be turned in their direction. The battle was won, but the war for Earth had just truly begun. The silence in the aftermath was a heavy, suffocating blanket. It was broken only by the hiss of emergency sealant and the faint, rhythmic pulse of Lyra's single blue optic. They were alive, adrift in a metal corpse, in a graveyard of shattered light where a starship and a precursor artifact had once been. The victory felt like a prelude to a slower, colder death. Kalen floated in the cramped confines of the cockpit, watching the stellar corona of Viridian Prime, no longer a threat, but a beautiful, indifferent tombstone. Life support is running on auxiliary batteries, Rorik reported, his voice flat, stripped of its usual panicked energy. He sounded exhausted down to his soul. "We have air for 72 hours, hey. Water recyclers are offline. After that, well, the view is nice. There's nothing on long-range sensors," Maya added from the breach, where she was reinforcing the patch with a sheet of scavenged plating. "No Vex, no rescue, no anything. We're a ghost in our own machine." Kalen's gaze fell on the tactical display. The crimson icon of the Harbinger was gone, but the ghost of the explosion remained a roiling cloud of superheated gas and radioactive debris. It was a scar on the face of the star, and within that scar was their only chance. "There's wreckage," Kalen said, a spark of the old scrapper's fire returning to his voice. The Harbinger's core might have survived the initial blast. Vex power cores are designed to contain their own detonation. It's shielded, self-contained. Rorik turned slowly from his console to stare at him. "You want to go on a spacewalk into the heart of a radioactive explosion that just vaporized a synaptic prime to find a power source we have no idea how to interface with. That's not a long shot, K. That's a suicide note. It's a better option than suffocating," Kalen countered, pushing himself off the wall and floating toward the equipment lockers. "Maya, how are the exosuits?" Mine's got a cracked helmet seal. Rorik's power pack is fried, she said without looking up from her work. Yours is the only one functional. You can't go out there alone. I won't be, Kalen said. He moved to where Lyra lay, her damaged form secured to the deck. The blue light in her optic pulsed steadily. She's still processing. Her mind is active, even if her body is broken. Rorik, I need you to rig a direct neural link from my suit's comm system to her primary logic board. If she can't walk me through it, maybe she can see me through it. The plan was audacious, a thread of hope woven from pure desperation, while Rorik, with a surgeon's focus, began the delicate work of interfacing human and Signian tech. Maya cannibalized her own suit, patching Kalen's with a grim efficiency. The spacewalk was a journey into hell. The wreckage of the Harbinger was a twisted sculpture of obsidian metal, glowing with residual heat and radiation. Kalen's suit Geiger counter screamed a constant, frantic protest. Lyra's voice was not in his ears, but in his mind, a stream of pure, dispassionate data that his comm system translated into her familiar tones. He was her eyes and hands. He found the core deep within the mangled torso of the ship. It was a sphere of pulsing, black crystal, suspended in a gimbal of warped alloys, miraculously intact. It radiated a quiet, potent energy that made the hair on his arm stand up, even through the suit. Lyra's thoughts explained. Following her directions, Kalen cut his way into the Harbinger's bridge. The synaptic prime's command throne was shattered, but the neural interface ports were intact. He carefully extracted a handful of the delicate, humming crystals. As he worked, a fragmented data log flickered on a nearby console. It was a feed from the Vex hive mind, a psychic shriek of fury and disbelief at the Prime's destruction. But it was more than rage. It was a call to arms. Fleets were being rerouted from across the quadrant. An eradication fleet was not just a plan anymore. It was a reality. And it was converging on the Sol system with a singular, vengeful purpose. And they knew who was responsible. The name Magpie echoed in the Vex script like a curse. Back on the ship, Rorik looked at the Vex core and the handful of processors with the terrified reverence of a man staring at the face of God. This is a symphony of wrongness. Kay, he breathed. I'm trying to teach a fish to sing opera by jamming a dictionary down its throat. But he set to work, his fear eclipsed by the sheer, beautiful impossibility of the challenge. While Rorik performed his technological blasphemy, Maya tended to Lyra, using the refined metals and power conduits from the Vex processors to methodically repair the Signian's damaged limbs and internal systems. Hours bled into a day. Then, too, the air grew thin, the cold of the void seeping into the ship. Finally, Rorik stepped back from the engine housing, his face pale and slick with sweat. In place of their old drive core was a monstrous hybrid. The black Vex crystal fused into the Magpie's engine with a web of glowing cables and the jury-rigged conversion buffer. It's done, he whispered. Either we fly, or we cease to exist. Flip a coin. At that moment, Lyra stirred. Her limbs moved, testing their new repairs. All her optical sensors glowed to life, not with their usual cool blue or curious violet, but with a fierce, burning white. She stood, her tall frame seeming to fill the small cockpit. Her connection to the hive mind's data stream had shown her the full, terrifying scope of the Vex's hatred. My connection to the technocracy is severed, she stated, her voice imbued with a new, hard resonance. They would deem my survival an unacceptable anomaly. My logic dictates a new primary objective: ensure the Vex's calculations regarding humanity's demise are proven flawed. Kalen strapped himself into the pilot's chair. Rorik, power us up. There was no roar of ignition. There was only a profound, vibrating hum that seemed to resonate in their very bones. The lights of the Magpie came on, not flickering, but burning with a steady, alien intensity. The ship was no longer just a collection of parts. It was something new, something more. Plot a course for Earth, Kalen ordered, and make it fast. The journey was a blur, a series of gut-wrenching, reality-bending jumps through space. The Vex-powered drive didn't just move them, it tore holes in space-time. A violent, brute force method of travel that no sane species would ever use. They arrived at the edge of the Sol system, battered and bruised but whole, to a sight that stole their breath. A wall of black, chitinous ships hung in the void near the orbit of Saturn, the Vex eradication fleet. It was a swarm of unimaginable size, blotting out the stars, but it was not unopposed. Facing them was the human defense fleet. It was smaller, a motley collection of retrofitted asteroid miners, sleek new military frigates, and orbital defense platforms dragged into deep space. It was a fleet built of desperation and ingenuity. On the command frequency, a calm, resolute voice was issuing orders, coordinating the defense with a confidence that defied the impossible odds. The warning had been received. They hadn't just been heard, they had been believed. Kalen opened a channel. Terran Command, this is the vessel Magpie. We have intelligence on the Vex flagship. The response was immediate. Magpie, you are a sight for sore eyes. This is General Thorne. Your data saved us. It gave us time to prepare. Get your bucket of bolts back behind our lines. You've done your part. Negative. General. Kalen replied, a slow, determined smile spreading across his face. He looked at Maya, who was already in the gunner's turret. He looked at Rorik, who was monitoring the Vex Core's insane power output with a wild look in his eyes. He looked at Lyra, who stood beside him, a silent, gleaming sentinel. We didn't come all this way to watch from the sidelines. The Magpie, a patchwork scavenger ship powered by the stolen heart of its enemy, veered away from the human fleet. It was a tiny, insignificant speck against the backdrop of the Vex armada. But it was no longer just a ship. It was an idea. It was a testament to the chaotic, unpredictable, and utterly unbreakable spirit of a species that refused to lie down and die. The galaxy had called humanity a fleeting anomaly. Now, as the Magpie charged headlong into the heart of the swarm, it was about to learn that anomalies were the most dangerous things in the universe. The war had come, and they were ready.